Okie dokie. Can everyone see basic hybrid pedagogy? So going to jump through this Zoom stuff, talk about recording and publishing lectures, and then some participatory virtual stuff spattered throughout. So very first thing, if folks have questions a lot about sharing music and sound. So since we started with that, the way to share sound via Zoom is going to be only when you're screen sharing. So as you can see here, as soon as you click that share screen button, you have to click this other button, share computer sound, and then that will relay whatever sound or music you're playing on your computer to everyone else. So if you're playing it on your computer but you're not sharing your screen, it's going to sound very muffled, which is like a common thing that happens. And I'll also be sending out this Google slide presentation with all these GIFs and links to things, so you don't need to jot down too many notes. So this is a standard UI. Hopefully most folks are familiar with this by now, but this is where you can start and stop audio, start and stop video, see what participants have joined, be able to share your screen, and also where you'll find the chat window. So hosts have slightly different UI capabilities. Theirs looks a little bit different. This is where you can change the name of your classes. So you might decide to update that to whatever lecture you're currently giving. And this is also where you're going to find the invite link to add participants. And so hopefully everyone has found the chat window now. But if people could go to the chat window and then add what class they'll be teaching in the fall, and whether it's a seminar, lecture, studio, and just kind of expected amount of people that will be joining. Just kind of amazing to see the variety of material that's going to be covered, and that we're all going to be going through this. Some of us have done a little bit in the spring or a lot in the spring, but it's definitely going to be quite the undertaking. The next thing I wanted to show is where you can actually change your name. So in case your name is not written correctly or you want to change it, can everyone do this right now? If you just go to the participants and then click more and say rename, maybe just add the class that you're teaching next to your name. Yes, correct. So everyone will have to actually follow up or send an email to get signed up for your Columbia Zoom account. And I can also send that link of where to sign up for it.
That would be
following this, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna try, just to put everything to the extreme, is breakout rooms. So what breakout rooms are is they create miniature Zoom meetings inside of your Zoom meeting. So let's say you have a class of like 30 or 40 students, and you want to give a lecture to everyone, but then following that lecture, you want to have smaller seminar discussions with groups of, in groups of 3 or in groups of 10. What breakout rooms does is breaks all those students into sub meetings, and then they will have their own little virtual meeting. And then you can come back together. So you shouldn't have any button right now to create breakout rooms because you are participants rather than the host. But when you create a Zoom meeting as a host, you will be able to create breakout rooms just like you're seeing on this screen right now. So this allows you to set the number of rooms. In this instance, I only had myself as a participant, but in this instance, you know, we have 47 people. So we'll try a breakout room and everyone will go into smaller groups. And then we will come back together. So let's just give this a bit of a test. Actually, before we do that, let me show you the next screen. So when I click this button to create a breakout room, I can set the number of rooms that I'm going to create for everyone. Mm-hmm. And then I get a pop-up panel that's going to allow me to open all those rooms. That essentially creates the rooms, the number of rooms I've said. I can close all the rooms, what you're seeing appear immediately after. And that will, when I close the room, that will bring everyone from those sub rooms back to the main Zoom room. Mm-hmm. And then finally, there's this broadcast a message to all. So that appears after I open the rooms. And what that's going to do is I can type as the host a message, and that message will appear in all those mini breakout rooms. So no one should see the button for breakout rooms right now because everyone in this meeting is a participant. Mm-hmm. And I am the host, so I should be the only one that sees that currently. Okie dokie. So before we get into this, let's actually give it a try.
Can I ask a question about breakout rooms?
Yes. Go ahead.
Can the host pop into the various breakout rooms?
Yes, you can.
If I want to have a discussion with each breakout room separately, can I do that?
So all of the breakout rooms are going to happen at the exact same time. So you can't really be in all of them at the same time. But this panel will show you, it will show you the list of all the breakout rooms, and you can click join to any one of them. So you have this kind of superpower to jump into whatever breakout rooms you want to, but you kind of can only do it one at a time. So when we get into our breakout rooms, I just want everyone to introduce themselves and then discuss some ways they're thinking about updating their class for the virtual environment in the fall. So for example, that could be like, I don't know yet, or I'm thinking I might flip my classroom and record my lectures in advance and use my class time for discussion or seminar discussions. Or I'm gonna change my project site to be close to where each student lives. Basically just, we're gonna have a very short exercise in this breakout room to talk about what folks are thinking about for virtual learning. They have to click join. So you all will get that experience right now. I'm gonna create these breakout rooms and you should get a pop-up window that says join breakout room. And once you click that, it'll bring you into that mini breakout room. And when I click when I click close, you will all come back to this main room that we're all in right now. So you can do it either manually or automatically. So when you click create breakout rooms, it gives you a place to check either automatic or manual. Manually, you can assign it yourself, but for a group of like 47 like this, you usually do it automatically just so that you don't have to, it takes some time to manually set who's in the rooms. So you set the number of rooms and however many participants are joined at that time will be subdivided. So you might have additional people join your breakout room if they join later on. Click the chat and just share something that either you discussed or you're thinking about doing, how you might change your class. So now that we're all back from the breakouts, and thanks for those who shared a little bit on what they're thinking about doing this next year. Another thing that I find is really helpful during lectures is just trying to create more comfort in the class of using cues via the video that someone is getting it or paying attention. So that can be anything from like nodding or giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's kind of awkward at first because people aren't really used to that. Usually we do things like raising our hands. And there's actually a feature to do this via an emoji, but you can also just use your hand, which I think is great. So we're just gonna do a little hand gesture poll. So if I can ask everyone how awake you're feeling right now, with this being I'm very awake and this being I'm not awake, and you can just anywhere in between, we're just gonna get a kind of read of the room. I'm just gonna run through a number of experiment ideas and talk a little bit about you know, how we might think about this moment. Prepping to do this hybrid thing is definitely a big change for a lot of us, and even, you know, I think really for everyone. And it can feel like a lot of precarity, even in this super uncertain moment. But pedagogy is always changing, but it definitely feels like right now it's really changing. So I just want to recognize the importance of this moment in history. And, you know, universities everywhere right now are grappling with both COVID and inequity. And GSAP has this rich history of thinking about collaboration via computers, from, you know, CBIP focusing on spatial technologies, to the Center for Spatial Research, to paperless studios, and a lot of the courses there. So computers and virtual involvement in the spatial design field is not necessarily new, but this is an important moment to recognize that even the way that we're teaching and the virtual collaboration methods using Zoom, or like passing Rhino files back and forth, the methods for virtual collaboration and for design can also be the content that we're delivering. And Columbia, even GSAP, is, you know, an Ivy League school and has an exclusionary white supremacist history. So when we're talking about inequity, I think this is really important to think about in how we create our virtual courses. So I was super interested to discover this Avery is on strike image from the '68 protests over Vietnam and the proposed segregated gym, because it reminded me a lot that, you know, history isn't happening somewhere else. It's happening right here, and for us it's definitely happening right now in our building or in our Zoom calls, and there's a duty we have to really shape it. And I'll try and get off a soapbox, but my point is that new cultures and norms are going to emerge at GSAP, especially right now while we're creating new methods. So let's really try and embrace that and make GSAP a more inclusive environment, and continue to push the experimentation in the ways and methods of teaching and collaboration, and like keep fostering that critical debate. Very quickly, if this doesn't make sense, that's okay, just write it in the comments. Some kind of fun experiments or virtual participatory methods we might think about adding to classes. So a colleague had pointed me to Bauhaus, and I thought there was something interesting in how it created this like very highly interactive method and encouraged students to make building designs and costumes, and even dances with, you know, using found materials. And as we're moving to a more global classroom where students can be involved anywhere in the world, this is a good opportunity to think through their own unique positionality, their own context, thinking about their bodies in space, the people they live with, the cultures they experience. We can take that idea of the kind of life as a total work of art, what are the aspects from our own positionality that will help us understand, because we don't have that shared physical space, but we do have that shared conversation, and we can bring these different contexts to it. So, we can think of the individual context also through very physical things, through like measuring our space with bodies and tape, or tactical urbanist methods. We can consider not just like using a Zoom call with our faces, we can see what's out our windows, what is the space and environment around us, what is the architecture there, what are the power relationships. And so if we're discussing something like, if you're doing a reading or a lecture on nominal dimensions, maybe you add in a bit where students measure their own spaces, their own doors, and have breakout room discussions about that. You might even like experiment with sending things back and forth, maybe not letters, but maybe designs or physical objects from the cities people are in. It's also a good moment to just think a bit about how the digital is working with the physical. So, our homes are really changing right now to offices and schoolrooms, and the virtual connections we have with physical space are more important. And also, we should consider multiple types of sharing during our lectures. So not just the host or the lecturer speaking at the group, but also moments for students to speak to one another in small environments and larger environments. Like, how do you kind of create the richness of conversations? And also try and create new rituals. So classes have their own rituals. Everyone meets in the beginning. Then some classes have a series of exercises. Like, what are your new rituals going to be in this virtual moment? That could be anything from having everyone join for a drawing session, and maybe you all just listen to music at the same time while you do something, and then you share by showing a camera view of what you drew. So shouldn't feel too constrained to the individual talking at many faces, because you'll get sick of it, and so will the students. Okay, so I just wanted to do a short exercise thinking a bit about your class or lecture. It doesn't need to be all of your lectures, but imagine like 60 minutes or 90 minutes of the class you're going to teach in the fall, or a class you're going to teach in the fall. And if you have a pen or a paper right now, or if you have, you can even do this, in an email or a Google Doc if you don't have a pen and paper. Just want you to kind of, in the same way this is very roughly blocked out here, think about how you're going to break up that lecture. And it doesn't need to be perfect, just more of a brainstorming exercise. What could you do outside of class time? Does it make more sense to record your lecture in advance so that there aren't as many technical hurdles? And then how do you break up the class time to make that most meaningful? Do you do something like have a discussion about a reading, and then spend a time doing some experimental activity together, and then come back together as a whole class? So let's just take a few, maybe 3 minutes or so, and then we'll come back together and share a tidbit. So the last segment I wanted to cover is a little bit technical, but I'll share this this Google Slides presentation so you can go back in, because there's a little bit more depth and it's a lot to cover in the amount of time we have. But I just wanted to talk about recording lectures and tutorials, because I think that's going to be a big part of virtual learning. You don't want to have to come prepared to do everything live. It's useful to kind of record certain things in advance, whether that's a portion of a lecture or if that's something like a tutorial. So at a very high level, recording and publishing lectures is a two-step process. So it just happens to have many options in between for how you accomplish recording that lecture and publishing that lecture. And there's a lot of kind of mini steps of those two steps, the record and publish the lecture. So the first part, we'll just talk about recording a full lecture. You can do this via Panopto or via OBS Studio, and I'll put links to what those are. So Panopto is going to allow you to record your camera, your video, and audio. And by video, I mean like screen recording. So in the same way, like I can give a lecture via PowerPoint or Google Slides. With Panopto, I will be able to share my whole screen, but also share a camera of me talking. So when I use that, I can either publish that to YouTube, save a web link, or that goes directly to Courseworks. And we'll talk a little bit in the publishing section how to get that video into Courseworks. The other method for recording a lecture is OBS Studio. This is the same as Panopto, but it has some more advanced controls that allow you to kind of curate what that screen is going to look like to students. So you can make your screen share a little bit larger or smaller, or you can make your video a bit larger or smaller. So just a bit more controls. In order to get Panopto, which is kind of the preferred base method to use, you'll sign in to Panopto on their website, which is linked here. You'll sign in with your Columbia email, and I've tried this. You should be enabled already. You don't need to send any email to anyone. And then you'll need to download Panopto and install it on your computer. So this is where people might run into some troubles, and you might need to reach out to IT specifically, but I had to upgrade my Mac's operating system to be able to download and install this. So just a forewarning, you might have to upgrade your operating system if you haven't in a while. Okay. Also, while recording lectures, a few things you might consider, and this is like bonus points, definitely not required. You might consider, especially if you're doing any sort of technical tutorials, get something like Cursor Pro. So if you saw any of the GIFs I recorded in the very beginning, when I click the mouse or drag, you'll see my cursor highlighted with this little circle. And that just helps students follow what you're clicking on. This is one that I use for Mac, but there are very similar versions in Windows if you just look up something like highlight cursor clicks. The other thing I found really useful is recording GIFs. So in presentations, sometimes it's very useful to have more moving images, especially with longer lectures. And sometimes for more technical things, it's useful to record the motion of me clicking through a few steps. So in order to record GIFs, I'm just going to share this. You can come back to these links later if you're interested, but Giphy Capture or Screen Recorder for Windows both let you create short GIF captures of your screen that are a few seconds. And then finally, I'll talk about publishing your lectures. So you can publish your lecture to Courseworks. If it's a technical tutorial in some way, you might publish that to the GSAP skill trails. And you might also decide to publish whatever you've recorded to a personal course website. All not required, but you might decide to do all three. So for Courseworks, usually you...
Excuse me, Violet.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you just record it in in Zoom and Panoptico, can't the students from that are registered for the course, can't they see it there?
I think you actually have to embed, you have to publish the video to Panopto.
You have to, yes. Okay. So
yeah.
once you publish it to Panopto, then only the students in the course can see it?
Yes, it'll be constrained to whoever is in the class. It's not like a public video.
Good. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. But if folks are familiar with Courseworks, you know how you can create an announcement or you can create an assignment or post your syllabus. Basically everywhere in Courseworks Canvas where you have one of these text boxes, you can add video. So in the same way you can add a like URL link or just write regular text, this, this little green Panopto logo is where you can click and select videos that you've recorded. So you need to do that in order for the students to be able to see those videos.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, if you've recorded the video somewhere else, like using OBS Studio, and you have it in a Google Drive, or if you have it in a video hosting, you can also add that to Courseworks by adding a link to that URL in the text box.
So if you tape as in through Panopto, can you save it as an audio video file in the file section of Canvas?
Can you ask that one more time?
I mean, is the Panopto video able to be saved as a video file and uploaded to the files feature of Canvas?
I'm not sure if it appears in the files, but you can add it to the files via anywhere there's a text box. So if there's a text box in the file segment, then yes.
Okay.
The only problem with uploading raw video, if it's not through Panopto, then I think there's a limit on how many megabytes or gigabytes you can add there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for the GSAP skill trails, that's mostly for, you know, if you have a visual studies or tech class or in your studio, you might record a kind of more technical tutorial. But this GSAP skill trails is amazing. Everyone should check out this link. It's a website that has all of GSAP's tutorials with video links to video tutorials, URL links to written tutorials, and it's a good way to kind of see the landscape of many of the things being taught. So if you have questions about how to upload videos there, you can reach out to Dan Tae-young or follow this steps 1 and 2 for doing it. Okay, and then finally, this is mostly a teaser for some of the next segments I'll do, but you can also post your tutorials and lectures to a personal website. You might do this through something like Medium or a blog webpage, or others in the past have done this through GitHub. So you can use that content in multiple places, as long as students know where to access things. And I would say as a baseline, just using Courseworks at the minimum. That's mostly what's important. So in the next Wednesday, I'll cover some methods for more collaborative virtual learning. So we'll talk about this interface that you're seeing in the background, which is Miro, which allows people to kind of interactively draw and whiteboard ideas together. We'll talk about Google Slides and things like Sketchfab that allow you to look through 3D models online, and some more things. So that's it for now, but feel free to stay on and ask questions. And if I don't know answers, I will be following up on what people ask.